Is this BRI? Oh, no, no. Okay. Uh,
Okay, so basically when we're looking at this, this is just a case that I wrote. It's not like superbly good. It's actually kind of bad, but like this is the general idea, right? So when I was like writing a case, like obviously like we haven't really talked about like how exactly to write a case. We've only talked about, um what is a case and what's the structure, right? So usually what happens first when I'm like writing a case is I would search up like the topic, okay? Like no first use policy. And then I literally just go like benefits. And then you like click on a link and then you read a bunch of stuff. And for example, let's see. Uh-huh. Yeah. So, when I'm looking at like, like I'm just reading through the article and then I see, this paragraph, right? Threats of first use are dangerous because, US has this nuclear arsenal along with missile defenses and like precision strike weapons may lead leaders in Russia and China to believe that the US is capable of conducting a disarming first strike against them. And then it could inadvertently increase the chances of nuclear war, right? So what I'm looking at, what the general idea that I'm getting from this paragraph is that like because we have a first use policy, which basically means like I can nuke you first, what happens is that other people are afraid of us, right? And then the chance of war increases because like if they're afraid of you, taking out their nuclear weapons first, they might want to strike you first, before um, America strikes them, right? So if we look like right here, in a crisis, Russian or Chinese leaders might come to believe that the US might attempt a disarming strike, forcing them in turn to contemplate acting preemptively. And preemptively just means like beforehand. So before the US acts, they would act, right? So because Russia and China are so scared that the US might just nuke them first in a war, they're going to be like, to prevent that, we're going to nuke the US first so they can't even nuke us, right? So that's the idea of why, first use can increase the chance of whatchamacallit, nuke war, right? So the general idea that we would call this contention, I'd say, is miscalculation, which is basically like, a judgment that you make that is incorrect, right? Because tensions are so high and the US has a threat of a first use, other people miscalculate our intentions and they might want to preemptively strike us. So then I would go, okay, so let's just, start a new page. So um we talked about the case, right? So a case has uniqueness slash and then you have your link impact, right? So first, uniqueness, basically what it means is what is happening in your world that you need to do something about, right? So I would say, let's see if I write contention one, miscalculation, right? I'm thinking, okay, the kind of uniqueness or context that I need to prove is that tensions are really high, right? Because like even if there is a possibility of miscalculation, if like everyone is like allies with each other and everyone's like happy and there's no wars going on, like miscalculation doesn't even matter. But if we have like, so that's why I would want to find a card that says like US, China, Russia tensions at all time high. Right, I just like search things up. And then see like look, US Russia relations are at the worst. So I would just copy the link And, right here, right, with a lingering risk of escalation, even better. So it tells you there is a risk of escalation, right? So we can say right now, and then we're going to cite the author, which is Newland in 2020, right? So Newland 20 finds, and then I'm just going to hyperlink this, Control K, right? Finds that U.S.-Russia tensions, what's the rest? Are at their worst since, okay, are at their worst, say that. And then I would say the other half, with a lingering risk of escalation. So I just say with a risk, right? And you don't always have to quote, right? Because in PF, we can paraphrase evidence. So you can also write like Newland 20 finds that U.S.-Russia tensions are at the highest in history, increasing the risk of escalation, right? So these basically say the same thing. One is just quoted, one is not. It doesn't really matter which one you do. So there we have the uniqueness, right? U.S.-Russia tensions are at the worst. So sometimes it's easier to, so what you want to do when you write a contention is you want to have a general idea of what you're trying to write, your narrative, right? Your story. So miscalculation. My idea here is that I'm going to say tensions are super high between US and another country, and because the US is first strike, that increases the chance of miscalculation. So when we go to a war with them, or or if they go to a war with us, the impact would be like nuclear war, and that'd be really, really bad, right? And usually it's hard to find the link card which says like, first use equals war, right? I would say the link card is probably the hardest card to find, but the impact card is a lot easier, right? So we can use an impact card, right? So my scenario, since I'm talking about US and Russia, I'll search up US-Russia nuke war, right? We kill everyone. Yeah, you just do something. Okay, 34 million people. More than 90 million people. I would say 90 million is a pretty good impact, right? So, if this just loads. Okay, so it's written by 19. Okay, so Charmin 19 finds that a Russia-US nuke war would kill over 90 million people, right? So, that's like a third of the US population, so it's pretty bad. So I'm just gonna link this. Okay. And then now we want to find the link that first use equals nuke war, right? So I think I'm just gonna use this card. There's obviously better cards, right? Because this just says like, oh, people can miscalculate, but it doesn't necessarily say that there will be war, right? So sometimes this might lead to you needing multiple cards, right? So first use equals miscalc, or one wrong strike equals nuke war, right? So we already have the first card right here. So the author is Tannenwald 19, right? So, Tannenwald 19 finds that because of a U.S. first strike, adversaries such as Russia and China are afraid the U.S. might use a debilitating first strike, and this and thus Russia might strike preemptively in a conflict, increasing chances of nuke war, right? So it looks like I just made all that up, but it's kind of like, this is like the amazing thing about paraphrasing, right? Like you can paraphrase all of this into just a bunch of stuff, right? So U.S. capable of disarming first strike, and then in a crisis they would, strike them first, and that leads to increased chance of nuclear war, right? So now we have evidence that says first strike means people are scared of U.S., they miscalculate, and they can preemptively strike. But the thing of this, my impact scenario here, right, of a Russia-U.S. nuke war requires that not only Russia nukes the U.S., but U.S. has to nuke them back, right? So we got to find a card that says if Russia nuked the U.S., the U.S. would nuke them back. What would happen if there's war? If Russia launches a nuclear strike, they have a retaliatory step. So the 3-part plan. Wow, this is insane. So they're gonna get a bunch of conventional forces, soldiers. They're gonna rally them up, and we would use our nuclear bombers and everything to destroy them. Raining down U.S. nuclear missiles to ensure that there is no retaliation. Okay, so if Russia were to attempt to nuke the U.S., right? And now we're gonna cite our author. Who's the author? Written by Barreau in 19. What was the wording? There you go. We have our contention. Aya. Aya. Okay. Ethan, can you tell me the problem with this contention?
The Newland 20 thing doesn't really have anything that like helps it. Like it doesn't really have the impact and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. But I think we do need to establish for, lay judges or parent judges that there are tensions, right? Like, because parent judges, they would think US and Russia are never going to go to a war. Like, I don't know, like, when you're thinking about it, like, tensions don't seem that high with Russia, right? Like, we're all dealing with Corona. We're not, like, trying to nuke each other. But by citing a card, we prove to them that, no, actually, tensions are really, really bad, right? But, okay, if we look at the resolution, right, the US should adopt a declaratory nuclear policy of no first use. What is missing in this contention that talks about this resolution?
Well, it's not really connecting it to it like it is.
Exactly, right? So, like, nowhere do I ever say no first use, right? Nowhere in this entire paragraph except for this part, but that's just stating the resolution, right? So what we're missing is solvency. And that basically is why affirming or negating or like doing the action that the resolution proposes solves the problem of nuke war, right? So what we need to find is NFU decreases no first use. We also call it NFU for short, right? NFU decreases miscalculation, or NFU decreases chance of war. So I'm just go and search that up. A no first use decreases miscalculation. There you go. Reduce the risk of accidental miscalculation. There you go. Where's the card? Right here. So we can see miscalculation. It's written by Fetter in 2017. So usually the way that you can structure your case in like a couple ways, but we always want uniqueness or the context at top, right? And then we want the link, and then we have the impact. So the question is, where can you put solvency? So you most definitely want link to come before solvency, but you can also put solvency after the impact, right? So we can put solvency here. Fetter 17 finds that a no first use policy would decrease miscalculation and accident from our enemies. Yeah. Okay. See, so actually I think I put the wrong link. This is the right link. Okay. So if we read this, right, contention 1 is miscalculation. Right now, Newland 20 finds U.S.-Russia tensions are at the worst with a risk of escalation. Tandem World 19 finds that because of a U.S. first strike, adversaries such as Russia and China are afraid the U.S. might use a debilitating first strike, and thus Russia might preemptively strike in a conflict, increasing chances of nuclear war. Fetter 17 finds that a no first use policy would decrease miscalculation and accidental escalation from our enemies, solving for the problem. If Russia were to attempt to nuke the U.S., Bureau 19 finds the U.S. would release a wave of nuclear weapons immediately against Russia to ensure no retaliation. Problematically, Sharman 19 finds that a Russia-U.S. nuke war would kill over 90 million people, right? But you can also put it underneath the impact, right? So we've listed out the entire problem, and what we can say is, luckily, an NFU will solve. So problematically, it would kill 90 million people, but luckily, NFU would solve, as Fetter 17 finds no first use would decrease miscalc and accidental escalation. So, see, that was like really quick, right? We started this meeting at like 3:35. That only took me like 22 minutes to write a contention with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 different cards, right? So, it doesn't have to be too complicated, really, when you're trying to write a contention, right? You just have to read up on the topic, have an idea of what your impact scenario is going to be. And what I mean by impact scenario is, what is the you need the contention idea and also what the impact is, right? So for example, your contention idea could be miscalculation, that a first strike, like what is happening right now, is really bad because miscalculation can kill people, right? But that's too vague, right? Like it's just, oh yeah, miscalculation happens, but you need to know like what is the impact. So like miscalculation between US and China, US Russia, US North Korea, US Iran, right? There's a lot of different places where you could be like going to war, or like, you know, people are dying, and you should be able to choose in on one so you can like hone in your focus, right? But let's say you don't want to do that. You just want like a general miscalculation. That's also okay. You just need to find, just you need to be able to make sure that you can back up your claims with examples. Like, you don't have to say it in your case, but for example, your opponents might ask in crossfire, like, oh, okay, well, how will miscalculation like play out, right? You can't just be like, it will just happen, right? You have to give like a specific impact scenario, which is like, oh, Russia will be like, when tensions are super high, Russia will be scared that US will strike them first. So instead, Russia will strike the US first, and then that would lead to an entire nuke war, which would kill like millions of people, right? So I talked about how you know, you want an impact scenario that's specific. But let's say you have a lot of background knowledge and you want to keep your options open. Right? You don't want to like limit yourself to only one impact scenario. What you can do is, where is my app? Huh? Okay, but I had like a card that said like one nuke would kill millions of people, right? So you can just like, yeah, I can't find the card, but you could just search up like how many people would one nuke kill? And then like, for example, it says like 3 million if you dropped it in the city. Then you could just cite like, oh, problematically, miscalculation can lead to the launching of nukes. And like, I don't know, CNBC 16 finds that just one nuke in a populated area can kill 6 million people, right? So obviously that's like a huge impact. We don't want like 6 million people to die. And um, it also keeps your options open, but you can also tell that like, it's not as big as 90 million people, but that's okay. Um, so this is like the process of like writing contention, right? Do you have any like questions? Okay. I guess that's a no. So what we're gonna do next is um okay, so for next week, just make sure you're gonna write a short contention like this. Just take an idea and then run with it. You can either go af or neg, it doesn't matter. You can say NFU is bad. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to read you a case. Let's see. Okay, yeah, I'll read you this case, and you're going to try to respond to it. I'll just read you like one contention. Okay, yeah. So I'll read you contention 3. Okay, so get up a piece of paper and flow it like we did in the practice round, except now you're actually the one making a rebuttal speech. And don't worry, it doesn't have to like cite cards or anything. This is all like from the top of your head. Like, I don't care how good your rebuttal is. It's just that you have to like try and like think. Okay? Are you ready for this?
I'm getting a piece of paper.
All right.
Also, William is here.
Oh, William is? Hi, William.
Hi.
Can you also get out a piece of paper?
I have.
Great. All right. Are both of you ready?
Yeah.
All right, then I'll start. So our third contention is South Korea. Harvey 19 explains that U.S. first use is critical to maintaining strong alliances because our allies perceive that the U.S. is committed to deterrence. Historically, to Trice 9 furthers, while countries tend to feel safer and denuclearize under nuclear assurance, lack of security guarantee is a driver of proliferation. Critically, Harvey 19 continues that an NFU would cause America's allies to lose faith in our nuclear umbrella and would spur them to make their own nuclear weapons. Roguerick 17 explains that North Korean nuclear proliferation has pressured South Korean leaders to respond, but Peabody 19 finds the U.S. first use assures South Korea because they perceive it as a sufficient deterrent for North Korean provocation. Roguerick furthers that the actual probability of a U.S. first strike doesn't matter, but the perception of a first strike alone provides political assurance for South Korean leaders and prevents them from nuclearizing to reassure their allies. If U.S. commitment wavers, Kim 20 explains that South Korean leaders would be forced to develop nuclear weapons to counterbalance North Korea. Kex 17 furthers that South Korea has enough plutonium to build a bomb within 6 months. History proves, as Brown 17 states in the 70s when Nixon announced that allies would need to take greater responsibility for their own security, South Korea and Taiwan interpreted this as a sign of abandonment and began to develop their own nuclear programs. Only a reversal of this statement prevented them from obtaining nukes. Nuclearized allies sparks an arms race as Debs 18 explains that proliferation has a rippling effect where neighboring states rush to obtain their own security guarantees. The impact would be devastating as Kronig 15 asserts that nuclear proliferation leads to a use it or lose it situation where states feel the need to strike first with nukes, leading to a catastrophic nuclear exchange which could quickly escalate. Germanos 13 finds even a small nuclear exchange would devastate ecosystems, causing a massive famine, killing over 2 billion people. Okay, so do you guys have any questions about like any words or like the idea of the contention? Okay. So basically, I'll just explain it, right? The U.S. has an alliance with South Korea to protect it. It's part of NATO, so we give South Korea troops and we have like U.S. military bases there. But we also promised that like, hey, if anyone like even tries to like attack you, I'll just nuke the crap out of them, right? So like I'll nuke them first. And the reason why it's so important for South Korea is because North Korea has a bunch of nukes. It's been like it has like 14 nukes right now, and North Korea and South Korea are like right next to each other, so North Korea could like wipe out South Korea. And basically South Korea is super scared because what it believes is that a US first strike is the only thing that protects them from like North Korea trying to um like invade them or nuke them or like use some kind of like weapons against them, right? So the US first strike is really important for that. And my contention is saying that when we adopt a no first use, South Korea would be like, oh my God, the US doesn't care about me anymore. And like North Korea is gonna like try and invade me. I need like to protect myself. So they're going to build their own nuclear weapons. And that would be really bad because everyone around them, like, Japan, um, would be like super scared. They'd be like, crap, why is South Korea building nukes? Like, what if South Korea nukes me? So I'm gonna build nukes as well, right? And the problem when you have like a bunch of states that are nuclearizing is that like, oh, like you're trying to use your nuke first because like, let's say you you are building a nuke and they're building a nuke and you don't know when they're going to finish building their nuke, right? So you want to nuke them first to make sure that they'll stop, right? So for example, if me and you are like assembling a gun, let's say a water gun to keep it safe, right? Let's say I can't see how fast you're assembling the gun. So once I assemble my gun, I'm gonna try to shoot you with the water first so that like you won't be able to complete it or you won't be able to use your water gun on me. And that'd be really bad because 2 billion people would die. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set a timer for 4 minutes and you guys can just think of some responses off the top of your head. Like, for example, you can say like South Korea is not scared of North Korea, right? Like you can just say stuff like that. So let me know if you need me to like scroll up or down. But basically, try to make brainstorm some responses to this contention, and I'll let you know when 4 minutes is over.
We're just finding ideas right now, right?
Yeah, you're writing down ideas, and then after 4 minutes, I'll ask you to respond to the contention. So try and get a couple down, yeah.
Wait, do I use absolutes or like do I use like can?
Yeah, you can use either. I'd say just use absolutes. Just pretend like you know what you're saying. Because in like debate, like even when we know something is true, we're just like, no, you're wrong. So this is not like your English essay where like maybe, or like your history essay where like perhaps this person is doing that. No, like you are right. Whatever you say, just believe in yourself. Be super confident. Yeah. And y'all have like around a minute left, so keep going. All right, y'all, a minute's up. Who wants to go first? Does anyone want to go first? If not, I'm gonna.
go first.
Okay, go ahead, Ethan. Let me take some notes on the side.
No, William does.
William wants to go first.
Yes.
You want to go first, William?
No.
Are we throwing each other under the bus? Okay, how about this? Ethan, pick heads or tails?
Me?
Yes.
Seriously. I really like
Tails.
Tails? Okay. It's heads. So, William, do you want to go second or first?
second.
All right, Ethan, it's time to go.
Fine. So the first use is safer and it's less likely for people to nuke other people in the first place. And like, no, there won't be any change in security even if NFU happens or it doesn't happen. And North Korea will bomb South Korea less because North Korea won't North America won't bomb first. North Korea is also scared of. I mean, yeah, North Korea is also scared of North America's power. So yeah, that's all I got with. And South Korea trusts North Korea. They had a lot of alliances and stuff like that. So they won't build their own weapons.
Great. All right. What about you, William? What do you have?
I don't have that much. I have like NFU like won't change like the same thing as Ethan. And then I have so like South Korea like it can't is like maybe it's not even afraid of North Korea, and North Korea will not bomb nuke South Korea because the US will probably the US will bomb back immediately. And
Exactly.
so that's all I got.
Yeah, that was great from both of you. So, I believe we talked about this, right? So, a first use is like, oh, we can use this even if you don't nuke us, right? We're gonna use it like whenever we want. That's what a first use is. Like, whether it's you're invading my country with like troops on the ground, whether you're bombing me, whether you're flying airplanes over me, or you're like hacking my like internet or something, I'm just gonna like I can nuke you, right? I can do whatever I want with my nukes. But a declaratory no sorry. A declaratory no first use pledge means I won't use this first unless you nuke me, right? So let's say North Korea does nuke South Korea. The US would still nuke them back, right? We're just not going to nuke North Korea first because as of right now, because of our first use policy, like out of nowhere, we could just nuke North Korea whenever we wanted, even if North Korea didn't do anything yet.
Oh wait,
right?
so wait, first use is like doing it like no matter what, right?
Yeah, first use is like it doesn't matter what your like enemies have done. You can use it if you want to use it, right? Like
even if nothing happens, like first
yeah,
use is
like for example, I think
okay.
that Russia will nuke me, but they haven't nuked me yet. I can still just nuke them first because I'm that scared, right? So basically, a first use just allows you to use it against any. Even if I don't think Russia is gonna nuke me, like let's say I think um Russia is gonna like send in troops and like try and invade France, right? There's no nukes there. There's only troops, but I could still like nuke Russia. Like even if they haven't had any troops moving, if I thought that like they wanted to, I could just nuke them, right? So there's like no promises of what the US will do. So like that's why everyone is so scared, right? But that doesn't go away when the US gets a no first use because under a no first use, what it basically is that the only thing it promises that I won't nuke you unless you nuke me, right? So or like perhaps my allies, right? So like if, North Korea were to nuke South Korea, the US would nuke North Korea. Like definitely we nuke them, right? Um but that's like a second strike capability, which basically means a first strike capability just means like we hit you first before you've done anything to us, right? A second strike is you've hit us first, so you've done the first strike, and then we're retaliating, so we're like getting our revenge, right? So what you guys both brought up is a really good point, right? Like NFU doesn't change the amount of deterrence, and deterrence is basically like um how much you can scare your opponents from doing stuff, right? So like deterrence is like my parents threatening to beat my butt if I don't like go to school every day, right? Like that's deterrence. Like I'm scared of them, so I do go to school. Um so basically you both kind of said that like the US is still like super powerful, right? So South Korea won't actually be scared and North Korea will be scared of America, so they won't bomb South Korea. And that's a really good point, right? Because I mentioned earlier that the US has a lot of military, not only nukes in South Korea, but we also have like military. Like we have troops there, right? So let's say North Korea did invade South Korea. Like we have like a bunch of military bases there, and like the US is one of like the most powerful armies in the world because we spend more than like the top 10 countries combined, right? We're like number 1. So really we could crush North Korea no matter what they did, right? So you guys are right in saying that North Korea wouldn't bomb South Korea. And then Ethan also brought up the point that, well, both of you kind of brought up the point that like South Korea and North Korea like trust each other, right? So we can also, that's a really good point, right? We can also talk about like the diplomacy that's happening between the two countries, right? Like their relationship has gotten a lot better since the Korean War, and definitely they've had like a lot of agreements and treaties to try and protect each other from conflict and like to collaborate. So we can see that like you can just argue that like there is no problem at all. Like even if the US removes its deterrence and we can no longer deter against North Korea, they're not even scared of it. Like South Korea is not even scared. It'll never build nukes because there's like it's not scared of North Korea because they're actually like they have like promises to each other that they won't attack each other, right? So that's a really good point. And then you guys also brought up how did you say first use is safer, Ethan? Was that your first point, Ethan?
Wait, I'm confused right now.
think it was.
Oh, sorry, I said it wrong. I meant like no first use.
Oh, no first use. Yeah, okay. I was a little bit confused. I was like, oh, we're on the F. But yeah. So yeah, you can argue that no first use is safer and less likely for people to nuke each other because like we talked about like miscalculation on the F, right? I wrote that example contention. And if we like make people like feel less threatened, they have less of a reason to try and attack us, right? Like if I put my gun away, you have less of a reason to try and like attack me first, right? So that also decreases tension. So you can also say that the problem also isn't there, right? So I would say, yeah, these are all like really good responses from you guys. Okay, so now I can like we can analyze these, right? So this is actually it's a link turn, right? So what you guys say is that what your opponent is saying that a first use is no first use is bad because it makes North Korea more likely to attack South Korea and South Korea is going to be scared, right? A link turn basically says a link turn is basically turning their argument for yours. So basically, their link is that no first use is worse, but you're just saying no first use is better, right? So it technically turns the argument. So what happens is that we see that whatchamacallit, sorry, I'm like blinking. Okay, so you say no first use is safer, right? And you know, we obviously will have cards to back that up later. We have evidence for that. And that turns their entire argument. So basically, instead of like South Korea feeling threatened, it'll feel less threatened because now North Korea is less of a threat to it. So it believe us even more, which is like probably good for like XYZ reasons, right? It probably decreases the chance of war. And then this NFU doesn't decrease the amount of deterrence. This is a D-link, right? Well, basically, the link into, you know, South Korea nuclearizing is that the security guarantee goes away, right? Because the US's first use its nuclear umbrella, and it's not like actually umbrella. It just means like everyone the US protects with their nukes. That's like a security guarantee, right? And people are saying that with a no first use that goes away. But what you're saying is you're delinking it, right? You're taking away the link. You're saying no, it doesn't change the amount of deterrence because like obviously if they nuke us first, we can just nuke them back. So like they're still scared of us, right? We just promise not to like hit them first for no reason, which is like good. And then we North Korea won't bomb South Korea first. Yeah, that's kind of like a D-link on the link that like South Korea is scared of North Korea, right? And then North Korea is scared of US power. That's another D-link, right? The security guarantee is still there. This is also a D-link that South Korea trusts North Korea so they won't nuke each other. NFU is working. Yeah, that's also kind of like a link turn because they're saying it's bad, you're saying it's good. South Korea isn't afraid of North Korea. North Korea won't bomb South Korea because US will bomb back immediately, right? So we have all these D-links. So I'm just gonna like give you guys a couple more ideas. I'm gonna like give my rebuttal to it perhaps. So first I would do a non-unique at the top, right? And what a non-unique is that it's just like the problem's going to happen anyways. This impact is going to happen anyways. So my non-unique is that the Korean War is imminent because North Korea is no longer scared of the US, right? Even with a first use policy. I had a piece of evidence for this. Like, I'm not going to try and pull it up right now. But basically what this says is that this North-South Korean war, like North Korea attacking South Korea will like happen regardless of whether or not the US has a first use policy. Because the North Korea already like doesn't believe that like the US would do anything for South Korea. So in the future, the North Korea is going to, you know, invade South Korea or something. And obviously, South Korea, to try and protect itself, it's going to attempt to build a nuke. So you're going to see the impact happening all over again, right? And then second, I'm going to put a D-link, like you guys. U.S. conventional military and missiles are. Right. So what we mean by conventional military is everything that's not nuclear. So like troops on the ground, airplanes in the sky, just normal bombs, not nuclear bombs. So my D-link is that U.S. conventional military is good enough so South Korea won't be scared. And then I'm going to put another D-link, which is South Korea can't get nukes because international would cripple its economy. So basically, let's say I do, this is a link on like the second link perhaps. So the first link is that like US NFU means South Korea is scared. And then the second link is South Korea scared means South Korea will proliferate. The third link is South Korea proliferation means a nuclear war, right? So I'm getting rid of the second link that if South Korea can't get a nuke, even if they are scared, they can't get a nuke because sanctions are basically just like, oh, the US saying like, I won't trade with you anymore, or like the global economy saying, I won't trade with you anymore, right? And South Korea is definitely connected to the world economy. So if, the US was like, I don't want you to get nukes, and a bunch of people around the world also don't want more people to get nukes because obviously it's like a threat to their countries, right? So they're all going to stop trading with South Korea, and that would destroy its economy. So even if it tried to get nukes, it wouldn't have any money to like buy the materials to get a nuke, right? So that's another D-link on the second level. And then on the third level D-link, we can say mutually assured destruction prevents war. So basically what mutually assured destruction is that it's like why Russia and the US have never gone to nuclear war, right? Like if you think about it, we've been like super close, but we never do it, right? And the reason why is because like Russia has like thousands of nukes. The US has thousands of nukes. And like each nuke is enough to kill like millions of people, right? So if the US used like all of its nukes against like, Russia, it like, probably kill all of Russia. And obviously Russia would kill the US back. It's like, both countries would be completely decimated and they know that. So that's why they never try to like nuke each other because like that's super dangerous, right? Like I know that if I were to shoot you with a gun, before you die, you'd shoot me too. So we just both die. So there's no reason for me to be shooting you because I'm scared of dying myself, right? So that's mutually assured destruction. And what it basically says is that if South Korea were to get a nuke, South Korea and North Korea would both have nukes and they don't want to nuke each other anymore because at this point, if they nuked each other, they would just like, they'd just both die, right? So that's another D-link. And I think you can use this to do a impact turn, right? And what an impact turn is, it basically turns the impact for your side. So saying it's good. So their impact is proliferation, right? That a bunch of our allies like South Korea, Japan will start building nukes and they'll get nukes, right? And you can say getting nukes is good, right? They say it's bad because it leads to war, but we say it's good because it increases MAD or mutually assured destruction, right? And the reason why is, let's say everyone in the world got a gun, right? So if you shot anyone, they'd be able to shoot you back, right? So if everyone in the world got nukes, if someone were to nuke one of them, they'd be able to nuke back. So essentially, like, it increases the guarantee that people won't try to nuke each other, right? Like right now, North Korea can nuke South Korea because South Korea doesn't have any nukes, right? But let's say South Korea got nukes, then North Korea nuking South Korea would be like suicide. They just like kill themselves, right? So we can say that proliferation is good because when that happens, we can increase mutually assured destruction. Okay. So do you guys have like any questions on what I talked about? No? Okay. Well then y'all are free to go. I think that's the end of our time. And remember to write that small contention for next week so I can look over it.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, cool. Nicole, are you dropping Alta?
Yeah, I told you that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, bye.